World Trigger. I'm pulling it up right now because it's kind of far away. There you go. This is World Trigger, chapter 248, Rokuro Wakamura, part 4. It's been a while since we talked about World Trigger. Very excited to get into it again. Last we left off, a lot of stuff happened. There was a lot of talking about, Rokuro's shortcomings as a human being.
Not
shoes,
just a border
whack.
agent.
Your clothes, whack. The
Your
way you dress your
swagger,
hair,
whack.
Yeah,
whack.
there was a point where, okay, so to recap, since we haven't spoken about it in a while, Rokuro asks Hughes what he thought and what he thought he was lacking and what Osamu has. It's like, why is Osamu better than me right now? is basically the question. And we spent a good chapter of Hughes being like, are you sure you want the answer to that? And, he conferred with Inukai, who seems to be taking himself up as Rokuro's teacher. And, she's like, I just wanted you to know that I'm about to give your pupil advice. And I wanted to get your approval on that because I'm about to be very critical. And Inukai's like, yeah, sure, go for it.
Do your thing, bro.
Yeah. And Rokuro basically learned that, I don't know, I guess like the long and short of it is that Rokuro would always try to, like, I guess, make these big hurdles towards improvement, where Osamu always focused on, like, get these attainable goals on top of just having this. Wait, what were you saying?
Compartmentalized.
Yeah.
He compartmentalizes all of his steps.
Yeah. And Osamu is just like a capable person naturally, just because he can think outside the box, and all that stuff. So, it was a long answer. It was actually 2 chapters worth conversation about why Osamu was better than Rokuro.
And may I add, it was a pretty fire 2 chapters.
Yeah, it was a lot. Yeah, it was very good. And the last chapter left off with, I believe, one of the snipers from Arafune squad talking with Rokuro, who kind of looks like Osamu here. Not for nothing. And he's just like, hey, I hope you're not down on yourself. Both Hughes and Inukai are basically telling yourself to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Rokuro is a Detroit Lion.
Hughes would be the Detroit Lion.
Hughes is Dan Campbell, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're basically talking about, he's like, hey, Rokuro's like, how does Arafune himself instruct you? And basically, he explains that Arafune gets regular training regimens, and he gets like a 1-hour training course, but it only takes him. It took him 90 minutes instead of an hour one time, and Arafune looked over and he was like, "This is good work. Good luck on the next one." So he's like, well, I guess my captain also tends to half-ass things. So, Roku was just like, he said that he was surprised that he didn't have any complaints about his leadership. And Hanazaki, as I'm learning his name now, there's a lot of characters in World Trigger. He basically is like, compliments me? No. He's like, I'm sorry. I hope you don't take it personal when I say stuff like this blows or what a drag. This is just things I say to just kind of like lock in and settle down. It's not something I mean. It's just like things I have to get off my chest in order for me to focus. So, he feels real bad because he thinks he may have made Rokuro feel bad. So, he's beating himself up about it. And we cut back to Hughes hanging out with Hisato from Suwa Squad. And he's basically like, hey, in the event that Rokuro remains despondent tomorrow, do your best to make up for Rokuro's shortcomings.
If he's too crushed
Yeah.
by those bombs I dropped on
Yeah.
him.
And
Take the reins, all right?
yeah, Hisato's like, I think it'll be okay, but I hear you. No problem. And he asks Hughes why he thinks Rokuro was chosen as a captain, which is an interesting question. And, you know, he makes sure that everybody knows, like, hey, I don't really have problems with him being a captain, but there's a lot of qualified people that could have been captain instead. So why do you think they chose Rokuro? And basically the long and short...
Real quick, this guy's from Suicide Squad, right?
Yes, Hisato is from Suicide Squad. And Hughes, the long and short of it, explains that he thinks it's because they're looking for people to become potential instructors, and someone like Rokuro may be in that mix. He explains his reasoning is basically that the organization is very bottom heavy. I guess there's a disproportionate amount of lower rank of C rank agents who are the trainee level of agents that don't even have like real triggers, compared to like the B squads, which are the full agents. So they're thinking that, you know, they're trying to find people to use their experience to train C rank agents. And, you know, there are people like Katori who rely on intuition, who may not be good teachers. And there's people who are like Osamu, who are very smart and are probably good teachers, but they're probably too unique to really relate to younger agents. So someone like Rokuro, who represents the inexperienced demographic, given that he currently lacks, if we assume that Rokuro can drive himself past those walls, he can basically be a great service to other agents like himself and help people who are also struggling in their journeys as agents. So, you know, basically, Rokuro is being kept in mind as a teacher, probably for C rank agents. So, you know, this, and Hughes clarifies that this is just speculation on his point. He doesn't know what leadership's true intent is, but in any case, this exam represents a defining crossroads for Rokuro. So that's interesting. We then get a lot of pages dedicated to the A rank agents reacting to this whole Hughes and Rokuro kerfluffle. There's a lot of responses varying from Hughes getting good scores for his advice, and people scorning Rokuro for, you know, either taking the easy way out or not being very assertive on his own. So, you know, there's a lot of that in the mix. We get a little bit of character, not development, but, you know, a little bit of expansion on one of the Arashiyama squad guys. His name is Toki. And we've seen him around a lot. He's like one of the Arashiyama guys. He reminds me of Kikuchi Hara, the one with the side effect of hearing. Brother. Is it? No.
That is... Wait. I'm not sure. That's his older brother, the one that's talking now, I think. I don't know. Are they look alike?
They look alike. I don't think they're brothers, though. I feel like we probably would have. No, I think they just look kind of similar.
They have different hairstyles.
They do have different hairstyles, but I guess a vibe way, they remind me of each other.
Yeah, they do. They are. I confuse them all the time, too.
Yeah.
The one that's talking is the one that's on Arashiyama squad.
Yes.
And the one with the hearing is on...
it's on Kazama squad.
Yeah.
But yeah, he basically...
I thought they were related.
No, I don't think so. But yeah, he explains that, like, you know, one of the operators, I remember this guy, he usually watches over Enadora, and he asks Toki what advice he would give to Rokuro. And he basically explains that his parents always raised him to focus less on the goal itself and more on his best score, sorry. And he explains that, like, you know, the real question is how close to the goal did you get from your starting origin? Because, you know, just to let things be loose and, you know, allow your goal to even change on the way, you know. just focus on doing the best you can. And it came from this idea that after the first big attack by neighbors, he fell into a slump where he couldn't bring himself to care, and he figured his parents didn't want him to think that his goals were out of reach and that he might as well have given up. So that wraps up that scene for the most part. We cut over to Kodera's squad, and they basically are talking about Sua's squad's tactics, and they actually kind of like figure it out for the most part. They realize that like Sua squad must have been using blended mini squads geared towards combos between units. So like they're basically saying like whereas we had each person using their own avatars, they decided to use other people's avatars in their groups. So they're not just playing as themselves basically. So that was interesting enough. And we see Katora start to get a little like frustrated that she didn't realize this earlier. One of the Azuma squad members is like, a late game realization like this is bound to frustrate an A ranker, but how about Kodera himself? And Kodera is actually kind of pleased with himself. He's like, well, I don't usually get these Eureka moments. So, when I come upon the footprints of those ahead of me, I feel like I'm making progress myself, which is a good way to think about things, Lots of positivity.
Kodera is fucking him, man.
Mikumo's rival.
Yeah. We cut to the next day. Rokuro is in high spirits. He doesn't seem to have let the advice get to him that hard, and he's focusing on proceeding forward, which all the A rank squads are kind of happy about. We then cut to Sua squad to end the chapter as they are trying to figure out what to do with their day. They figure that they can practice for battle sims for a half hour and dedicate the rest to the delegated assignments. And that is basically their goal, and that's kind of where the chapter ends. Josh, what did you think about World Trigger chapter 248?
So this is my RGC.
Woo!
Certified RGC. Certified RGC. Certified RGC.
It may have came out December 3rd, but I read it this week. So it may not be kind of fair because this is off the back of the previous two chapters. Well, that's been centered around Rokuhira, but even this chapter alone, I think I enjoyed it probably the most out of them all. This is my favorite part of World Trigger, the dialogue between characters and how they show so many different perspectives that are like validated by each other, even if they disagree. They don't really like badmouth each other. They all support, just bring their own points to the table. So it kind of presents like these ideas in such a way that's like it's not about anything being right or wrong. It's about what is it that you agree with the most and what ends up drawing like results. And it's not always going to be apparent immediately, in the case with Rokuhira and a lot of other characters, or just people in life in general. So I really like that about World Trigger. I think the part with all of the captains in A rank, no, it wasn't captains, but all the A rank teachers commenting on the conversation that Hyusei and Rokuhira had. Oh wait, yeah, Rokuhira is the one they was all talking about, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, all right. Just make sure I'm not mixing their characters. There was a quote.
Well, Rokuro, not Rokuhiro.
Yeah, Rokuro. My bad. Yeah, that's
Chihiro you're thinking of.
Yeah. Yeah, Rokuro. On page, I think it's 22. There's a comment by one of the A rankers. They look like a cat or something like that. That I thought was really deep.
Yeah,
You guys see it?
I do see
and
it.
I'm not going to read the whole thing, but the gist of it is saying that the the anxiousness or like negative feelings that come like from like failure, you know, are just natural reactions. Like it's not it's it's like it's not something that anybody else doesn't already feel like, and that's it's like a I'm trying to articulate it in a different way without just reading it word for word. Um, you can use that as motivation, like those feelings that you feel after like failure. You can use as motivation to push you, to work harder and try something new, or not fail in the same exact way. It's just like a matter of like mindset, and I think that's something that's that's just a generally good message. No matter what the time period is, just for evaluating yourself and pushing forward to keep growing and achieving more. um and that's that it just that stood out to me in out of all the other responses. I mean, obviously it was like one of the lengthiest, but that's just one perspective out of many that shows that there's so many different ways to approach growth. It's because some people would think it should be one way or another, and regardless of what it is you end up doing, you have to do something and learn from your mistakes to keep pushing forward. Like I think that's just a beautiful life lesson for any of us. um the the chapter itself, these chapters have put it better than I could ever say it. In all honesty, I want everyone to read the series. I think the world would be a better place if everyone read the series. Honestly, I can't really say that about anything else. Um, but yeah, I guess to sum up my thoughts, I really appreciate the wealth of perspectives we got in this chapter that all kind of kept that same thorough line, being to learn from your mistakes and push forward. All right, Brian, what were your thoughts?
These last few set of chapters have been so relieving to read because it finally addressed the big elephant in the room for however long this arc has been going on. Like every time Rokura would like show up on a page or be in a panel, you'd be like, man, why are we focused so much on this character? Like,
Yeah.
what is he supposed to be compared to Osamu? Like, what is his deal? And every time you see him and you see that he's struggling, every time you see him and you see that he's struggling and you see that he's kind of messing up, you're like, what are we doing here? And it's not like a bad what are we doing here? It's like a what's the point? Where are we driving at here? And we finally got that. And honestly, an incredibly well handled way. Like this was honestly probably one of my favorite character moments in the series when it comes to this, because it just changes. It not changes, but it gives Osamu so many flowers in a way that you wouldn't expect. You know what I mean? Like that. This is what makes World Trigger so uniquely special, is that characters are strong in unique ways. Like Osamu is compared to what's her name? Like the fucking prodigy girl. As
Katori.
like, yeah, like he's kind of compared to her as like somebody who's like a specimen in their own right. Like, even though they like if you put them in a battlefield against each other one on one, she will mop the floor with him and destroy him almost every single time. Not even almost every single time. Pretty much every single time. And it's like the fact that those two people could still be on their own tiers above everybody else, considering how drastically like different they are. It just goes to show like World Trigger is no fucking joke. The character writing in this series is like none other that I've ever fucking experienced. Like this is honestly such a fucking treat to read these chapters. The way that they break down things and the differences between people and how they process and grow and become better in their own unique ways. And I don't think that Rokura is going to develop the way that Hyusei or everybody else is expecting him to. I think he's going to break through and find his own way to become his own person and grow in his own way. Because I feel like his thing is that he was always trying to do things the way it should be done, whatever that meant, right? By his standards. So I don't know. I have high hopes for Rokura in this arc. This was like such a fucking breath of fresh air to see this kind of level of character depth and respect and like just overall like, yo, let's just celebrate everybody and not really bringing anybody down. Yes. Does that make sense? It's like it wasn't even like a comparison. It was just like a matter of fact. This is how things are, and this is where you fit into things kind of chapter. And that's weirdly emotionally intelligent. This is the most emotionally intelligent chapters of manga that I've ever read because it was just no ego. There was just zero ego involved with all of this. It was just straight fucking like explanation and all that. It was almost like optimistic and uplifting in a sense, even though it was kind of like a breaking of the glass for Rokura. So I don't know. This is just like a fucking pleasure. I think this is the best arc. I mean, the best chapter in the arc so far. So yeah, those are my thoughts on World Trigger as well. Really excited to see what happens next.
Yeah.
I have some rebuttals, but I'll let you get your thoughts off.
Cool. I mean, I don't have much more to add. I think World Trigger is just really good at, I guess, just realistic dialogue between people. All of these A rankers, we don't know them very well, a lot of them, but they all seem to have like these very unique responses. It's almost like realistic in a way, and it also feels like they are writing in the comment section. It is interesting to see how the spectrum of opinion that they can cover with their characterization. So I thought that was really impressive. And I've mentioned this before, but yeah, it's just always impressive to me. And it's a good way to learn how to write realistic dialogue. It just feels like real people talking a lot of the time.
Quick question. Are the participants going to be able to read these comments at the end?
We don't know yet.
I hope so.
I imagine so.
Cool.
I wouldn't be surprised if they made it available for everybody. So we'll see. But I don't really have much to say. I think Brian covered pretty much everything about it. I'm excited to see everybody do their homework next chapter and the deep character implications of that.
Listen, this arc has won me over.
Which I say with no irony, because that is this arc of World Trigger.
At first, the homework was kind of whack, but now I'm like, all right, we're getting into like the more like upon rereading this arc, the homework stuff didn't really bother me as much.
Yeah,
I'll say that much.
Yeah. Josh, you had some rebuttals?
Yeah. So specifically to like what Brian was saying about like he mentioned how there was no egos. I would argue there was, and there was a point kind of made about it that was important. like some of the comments was like them saying it's too soon to declare I've got what it takes or I don't got it. Any given person is capable of so many things. And another person criticized saying, I don't want to hear all this whining until the guy is done and tried all he can. Another person said, yes, it's tragic if genuine effort leads to failure, but it sounds like he's not even willing to try without a guarantee of some imagined payoff. Ooh, that's rough. But I brought those up like specifically to say like I think there were a handful of opinions that came from the point of view of someone that is probably a lot harder on themselves and expects a lot more of themselves. And that could be for a lot of different reasons. But I think a lot like that can come from ego, from people feeling like whether they're special or like the expectations that they like put on themselves, they apply to like other people. You know what I mean? I don't know. I guess you could argue that's not ego, but I think it's the point that that's that thought process works for them. That's why they're critical of Rokura
Rokuro.
Rokuro. That's why they're like so critical of him because they're saying like, well, like they basically feel like you doing all this whining and you staying in the same place and you haven't even tried as hard as you can, essentially. That's what a lot of that kind of like boiled down to. And at the same time, you had plenty of other people saying like, oh, these things take time and that like it was wise to like seek that out and to try to see what he could learn from that and to build on that, especially if he comes back out of this conversation motivated or not at least completely devastated and negative. So I don't know. I think it's just like you guys have all like we've all mentioned already. Like the wealth of perspectives is incredible. But there's another point I wanted to bring up. Like I think World Trigger does this all the time, where they bring such value to like people, like the uniqueness of people and how you know everyone has a role to play in border and really like if you think about like in life in general like he what Rokuro was oh, I did not know we was covering that today. All right, Rokuro, who's nowhere near a top like combat agent, nothing like that, can be in that top tier with Osamu and Katora as a teacher, as someone that's guiding up like the new generation, and Hyusei himself, like who is high valued combatant and really smart, like puts value in the role of a teacher. You know what I'm saying? And like like I said, World Trigger does that all the time. Like they make like everybody, has a quirk about them that can, that's can be converted into a role that can be like played. And it's just that like World Trigger is this complete opposite of rigid. Like which is so wild because it's like a military, right? Which is when you think about military, you think about authority and rigidity or whatever, like this super like the structure that's infallible or whatever. But within this military structure, they give like their agents that freedom to be creative and try new things out. I think that's a good recipe for society. Honestly, a uniform, everyone having a uniform goal, but able to express themselves in ways to contribute more towards the overall product.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's well said. It's very interesting about World Trigger, and maybe it's a bigger topic for probably the end of the arc where they probably reveal everybody's like, well, at least leadership's intentions behind certain aspects of this exam. But it's how like they encourage growth in these like kind of unorthodox ways. It's interesting. It's allowing people to come into their own without like helicopter parenting them, if that makes sense.